Hello, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be making my graduation dress inspired by the formal dresses of the late 40s and early 50s. As I'm sure many of you know, I really love vintage fashion. I mean, obviously. So I thought it would be really fun to have my graduation dress look like the formal dresses from my favorite period of fashion. Generally, my favorite time span is from 1948 to 1952. So for over a year, I've been curating a Pinterest board that has all kinds of reference pictures. I did already have a design in mind for my dress, but I wanted to see in what ways I could incorporate aspects of the designs from the 40s and 50s formal dresses. So here is the dress as I originally designed it, but over my time of research, I've changed a few little things. For example, I think that a lot of people generally think that it's much more of a modern idea to have a short formal dress, but in the 50s there were tons and tons of formal dresses that were a lot shorter than the ones we often wear today. The skirts did still cover the knee, but it wasn't at all uncommon to have basically your entire lower leg exposed. So while I originally designed my dress to be floor length, I now want it to be about mid-shin. And in this design you obviously can't see the back of the dress, but in my head I had originally thought of doing like a laced up back, but I think now I'm just going to have it overlap a little with some hook and eyes. But a lot of the aspects of this design were absolutely present in a lot of formal dresses of the mid-20th century. For example, big tulle skirts for formal dresses were definitely very popular in the 40s, but particularly the 50s. In 1947, Christian Dior's new look was invented, popularizing the more extreme hourglass silhouette. In the late 40s and early 50s, a lot of formal dresses also had off-the-shoulder sleeves, as well as a lot of interesting big fluffy sleeve designs to emphasize the shoulders, which were very popular in the 40s. Some other things I noted in my research are that fake flowers were definitely a very commonly used embellishment for formal dresses. And there was quite an overwhelming presence of the color pink, both of which are involved in my dress design. So now that you know some of my references and the general concept for my dress, let's get into actually making it. So I have quite recently acquired a mannequin, as you can see, and here are basically all of the fabrics that I want to use on my dress, and yesterday I just kind of spent some time draping them on here to see how they look together, and I think for the making of this dress I am going to do a whole lot of draping. So I have a whole whack of this white tulle. That was just sort of to simulate the petticoat that I'm going to make for under this, because I wanted to have the nice floofy A-line shape. Then over top of that I've put two different shades of pink net. There is this very pretty kind of like watermelon-y pink, if you know what I mean. It's a little more red than this one. And then I have a couple yards more of this very light pink. The light pink net is also what I'm going to be using for the sleeves. And for the bodice, I actually have like this pink sheet here. But of course the finish of just like a cotton poly blend sheet is not particularly glamorous. So I'm going to overlay it with the light pink net as well. So just like this sliver here, you can kind of see what's going to be happening with the dress. Then I think I need to go to the thrift store to get some kind of like pink satiny fabric. I really don't need that much to use for the straps on the sleeves. So that's going to sort of be like a little satin band that has all the fluffy net coming off of it. So I'm going to unpin all of this, and then I'm going to get some sort of like polyester sheet scraps that I have lying around. I'm going to use those to drape the bodice on this. That way I can get sort of like the bodice pattern and everything. And then I'm going to cut it out of this, which is going to be the lining. This is like a dark pink polished cotton. So I'll cut the bodice out of a layer of this, a layer of this, and a layer of this. And then I'm also probably going to do a couple of boning channels just to make it sort of have a little more structure. We'll get into all that later. For now, I'm going to actually like make the bodice pattern. Excuse the fact that my mannequin is kind of nasty and has some funky stains on it. I got it from the antique store and I still have yet to clean it.
I rose to the attack, and when he called me Ethel, I just called him beardless back. Send out the army and the navy, send out the...
So I used like basically every single pin that I had in my pin cushion, but I have this bodice done and I think it's very beautiful. It fits the mannequin nicely. I'll probably need to make some very small adjustments at some point because the mannequin is not precisely like my body. Fun fact, this mannequin came directly off of the set of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, because my local antique store has like a lot of connections with a lot of movie sets and stuff, so yeah, this is apparently in an episode of Sabrina somewhere. So I'm going to start taking all of the millions of pins out of this bodice and lay it flat onto my fabrics, and then I can cut it out. To make it a little easier to cut out all of these layers at once, I decided to do some large basting stitches to make them act as one layer.
He is a horrid brute. Last Friday he was terse with me, 'cause I did not salute.
Alright, I have all of the layers of my bodice cut out. I have the lining and this sort of sheet, poly cotton, and the net. But I want the poly cotton and the net to act as one layer. So I'm going to lay them on top of each other and then sew around the edges using my sewing machine.
20 minutes later.
Okay, so my sewing machine is totally not working, and I'm not sure why. I haven't used it for a while, and the last time I was using it, it was totally fine. So I'm gonna try and figure out what's wrong with it, and I'll try doing the sewing again probably tomorrow, or I'll do that last step I mentioned by hand this evening. Okay, so I'm returning like 15-20 minutes later, and the sewing machine is now working, but I have no idea why. I don't know what was wrong with it, and I don't know how I fixed it. So there's that, but it's working, so I'm gonna get sewing. Once I finished flatlining the two layers of fabric together, I sewed together the darts of the bodice. Here is our lovely bodice. It fits quite nicely, but I think I'm going to need to figure out the back a little more because there's quite a bit of excess. The edges are still raw, so I'm going to sew together the lining. Then I can sew the lining bodice right sides together with this bodice and do the flipping inside out thing. Then I'll probably do some kind of top stitching along the edge to make it stay really nice and flat. But when I sew the lining and this together, I'm going to leave this bottom edge completely open. That way when I make a sort of like slip that's going to go under the skirt, it will sort of be sandwiched between the lining and this, if that makes sense. So I don't have much more time today, but I am going to sew together the lining. After sewing together the lining and the outer fabric of the bodice, I did a top stitch along the top edge by hand. Okay, so yesterday I pretty much finished the base for the bodice. I did some top stitching along here, I have the lining in there, and I cleaned up the back so that the bit where it overlaps for the closure is all nice and clean. Now the next thing I'm going to do, you know how a lot of formal dresses have that sort of slip underneath? I am going to make that out of the lining material and attach it to this. My plan is basically to take a big rectangle of this and then put darts in it so that it fits the waist. So I'm just going to start draping this onto this. I forgot to mention that before I started draping the slip, I hemmed the edges of the fabric where it was going to meet in the back. Then I sewed the darts that I had draped on the mannequin. Then I pinned the slip and the bodice together and sewed that as well. So I have the slip on the skirt. It has a pretty big gap in the back, but I don't really mind because the point of this is really just to sort of like make it more comfortable on your legs, the fact that there's like tulle over top of it because it can be really itchy. And it currently like fits a little bit weird because the lining is scrunching up all funky underneath because I basically sewed this slip to the front layer of the bodice, but then the lining of the bodice is still opened, and I'm gonna basically like fell this down, fold it under itself, and then whip stitch it down. So I'm going to start cleaning up the inside of the lining, and then I can start working on the skirt. So I'm going to start working on cleaning up the lining, and then we can start working on the tulle skirt. Hello, it is day number 3. So yesterday I ended up not actually working on the tulle part of the skirt because after I sort of like fixed the lining into the bodice, I ended up adding a little strip into this slip bit. The size of the gap here was starting to get to me a little bit, so I thought I could fix it relatively easily. So that's what I did yesterday. But today, it is time for the tulle. So for the length of this skirt, I want it to be about mid-shin. It's a pretty classic length for 40s, 50s kinds of formal dresses. And if I fold this tulle in half lengthwise, it becomes basically like the perfect length. So my plan is to just fold it lengthwise and then gather it by hand. So I'm going to do that for this color of pink, and then I'm going to do this color of pink over top of it. Once I've gathered it, I'm basically going to like unfold it, and along the center where I did the gathering, I can stitch it along the waist, and then it'll kind of cover itself. Does that make any sense? So I'm going to gather it by hand, but then use the machine to actually sew it onto this. So I'm going to start gathering some tulle. The silhouette isn't quite as I want it yet. I need to make it a little bit flatter around the waist because there's kind of a lot of bulk from the tulle here where it's gathered. So my plan is to sort of get like a cloth that I can put over this, and then I can iron it directly on the mannequin so that it sort of like flattens out around there. And then I'm going to be making a petticoat after the actual dress is done so that it'll get like fluffier down at the bottom. It is still opened in the back at the moment, so just like a few inches down I'm going to start hand sewing it closed. But right now I'm going to get out the iron and start flattening it out at the waist. Now that I've ironed it, I think the waist looks a lot better. It has a lot less of the unnecessary bulk. Now I'm going to start working on the sleeves. Now these, of course, I want to be off the shoulder, and I have this really beautiful ribbon. This is just a polyester satin ribbon that I found at the thrift store, but the color is absolutely the perfect match. So I'm going to make the sleeves by taking a small length of this that's the right size to be the sort of strap that goes off the shoulder, and then I made sure that I had a decent bit of the very light pink net left. To make the fluttery bit that comes off of the sleeve, I'm basically going to use the same construction as I used for a circle skirt, only instead of my waist is the measurement around my arm. Then I can cut the circle open and sew the upper edge to the ribbon. So I'm just going to fold the net in half so that I can cut out 2 of these. Okay, so I sewed the sleeves on, and I just tried the dress on, and oh my gosh, I love it, and I'm so excited to show it to you, but it's not done yet. We still have quite a bit to do. So as much as I really like the shape that these sleeves give, they're very like fluttery and delicate, the sort of strap that goes off the shoulder is very flimsy, so it doesn't actually stay like horizontally across my shoulder, you know what I mean? So my plan is to encase some wire all the way along the top edge, going through the sleeves, across the front, through the other sleeve, and then back to the back. That way there will be like a wire in the sleeve to hold it up. So I'm going to take some kind of ribbon, probably something around this width, so I can stitch that around the wire as I go along the edge. Encasing the wire in ribbon will just make it a little more comfortable so that I don't have any possible raw edges like scratching me or something. So I'm going to go get stitching some wire. This is probably going to take me quite a while, so it's likely going to be the last thing that I do on the dress today. Another thing that I am going to need to do for the structural integrity of the dress is put 2 pieces of boning in those darts in the front. I'll probably also put a tiny bit of boning in the closure in the back, but we'll figure that out tomorrow. I'm probably just going to be doing this today.
The next day.
Alright, it's day number 4, and you can see how I've done the sort of wire along the top edge here, and it's made the sleeves so much nicer and they hold themselves up a lot better. I have some zip ties here, and I'm going to use these as boning. I'm going to put a piece in each of these darts, or I guess not in, but like behind each of those darts, and then also in the back here. I'm going to use this same ribbon that I did before, and I'm going to use whip stitches to sew it down along each of the edges so that it'll become a sort of boning channel that I can stick the zip ties into. Then I'll sew it down on the ends so that the boning can't stick out. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that I sewed up the back of the skirt here. Okay, I have done some boning. So we got a piece there and there. It's very nice and flexible, but still gives a lot more structure. So I've tried the dress on and marked where I want to put the hook and eyes for the closure. So I'm just going to put this on the mannequin real quick and sew those on. I have finished the closure on the dress. It doesn't do all the way up. I can fasten it at the waist but not higher up because my ribcage is very small. But now it's time for something I've been looking forward to a lot, which is adding the roses. In here I have a whole bunch of these little fake white roses. So my plan is basically to paint these with the exact color that I want so that I can ensure that they match the dress perfectly. So I'm going to take some acrylic paint, mix it how I want, water it down quite a bit, and then just kind of tap my brush to the tip of each of the petals, because I don't want them to be entirely pink, just on the tips. Then once I've painted all of these, I can take the little plastic backing off and start pinning them and arranging them on the dress. But for the moment, I'm going to go and paint some roses. Painting the roses pink. We're painting the roses pink.
that helps to pull me through.
Okay, I've painted like a whack ton of roses. Most of them are more consistently pink, like this one, but then I made a few of them they're basically still white. I just sort of tipped them ever so slightly with a little bit of pink so that they match these a little better. So I'm gonna start arranging these on my dress. Okay, so I was just about to start putting the roses on the dress, but then I realized it actually not only would be incredibly adorable, but also very structurally useful if I put some pearls, fake pearls of course, into the center of the flowers. So I have a variety of different sizes of glass pearl beads, and once I take these little plasticky bits out of the flowers, all of the petals are separate and can kind of just fall apart. So I was thinking if I like threaded one of the pearl beads onto a needle and then stabbed it through there, the pearl would kind of hold them together. Does that make any sense? Anyways, there's going to be some little pearl beads in the center of each of the flowers.
The rank and file, send out the brave old territorial. They'll face the danger with a smile.
Alright, so I finished the dress, but you're not going to see that until the reveal. Now I need to take a bunch of this white tulle and make a petticoat. I'm not going to go into tons of detail on how I'm going to do this because I honestly think it's like kind of boring. I'm basically just going to gather a bunch of tulle and attach it to a waist thing, and it's going to have a drawstring at the waist. And that's it. So I'm just going to make that really quick, and then we can have the reveal. I'll show you the dress with the floofy petticoat underneath, and it's going to be great. So making the petticoat was quite simple, but it took a very, very long time. Gathering that much tulle, it took me like an entire day.
Last Friday he was terse with me, 'cause I did not salute. But I cut him twice.
Hold me close and hold me fast, the magic spell you cast. This is the vie en rose. When you kiss me, heaven sighs, and though I close my eyes, I see the vie en rose. When you press me to your heart, I'm in a world apart, a world where roses bloom. That is the finished product of my late 40s, early 50s graduation dress. I'm absolutely thrilled with the result, and I think that the finished product looks a lot like my original design. I'm so excited to wear this for my graduation and pretty much any other formal event that I get to wear a pretty dress to. And there's actually a couple different ways I can wear this dress also if I want to change it up a little bit. For one thing, I can put the sleeves on top of my shoulders, and that changes the look quite a bit, but I think is also quite pretty. I can also wear the dress without the petticoat, which makes it have a little bit of a less extreme circumference. Then of course there's a bunch of different ways that I can style this. Because of the way I've done my hair and makeup and everything, I think it makes the whole look a little more reminiscent of the late 40s than the early 50s. So this is a little bit more like 1949-ish. But depending on how I do my hair, if it's a little shorter, a little curlier, or if I have it up, it could be a little bit more 50s style. I can also wear different jewelry with it, have different accessories. I decided to wear this double-stringed glass pearl choker that I found at the thrift store. I had this necklace in mind while I was making the dress, which contributed to my wanting to put pearls in the center of the flowers. I kind of thought that that would help tie them together a little more, but there are still a few things that I need to complete this look. First of all, shoes. For the reveal that you saw, I was wearing a pair of brown heels that are actually my mom's. Then I'm also considering making some kind of hairpiece, probably using the same flowers and pearls that I used on the dress to do a little something that I can put like around here somewhere. But I do think that I want to stick with this hairstyle and makeup. But anyways, I am very happy with the finished product of this dress. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also tell me about your graduation and prom dresses. I really like hearing about other people's dresses and their inspirations and all that stuff. Real quick before I finish off the video, I'd like to mention that I have an Etsy shop called Gwen's Vintage Box, where I'm selling vintage and antique curated boxes themed after different colors. So the link will be in the description if you want to check that out. That would be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment, rate, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! The blender's on. Are we shocked? Then I'll sew it closed on the end so that the boning can't stick out. Oh my gosh, no. So sort of blend my, oh my gosh, I'm just tripping over things. Sorry, my mic just fell off of my camera.